the complexity of what you've just described is staggering in its scope, and then the number of people trying to navigate the system is appalling, and really ripe for new solutions. And courts are often slow moving and find it difficult to adapt to new technologies. But your plan in LA for 2025 to 2028 really explicitly highlights AI and generative AI as being important to the strategy of the courts. Could you tell us about the vision of the plan and why it's so important to you and the leadership of the courts and those you work with to harness the power of AI right now?
Yeah, one of the things that's sort of stuck with me for, I guess, now 11 years, and Chief Justice McCormack has heard me say this before. I keep thinking I'm going to get in trouble, get a call from Chief Justice John Roberts when I say this publicly, but I'll just keep saying it until he gives me a call. But in 2014, in his end of the year address that the Chief Justice always does, Chief Justice Roberts said, "The courts will often choose to be late to the harvest of ingenuity." And he was sort of talking about the slow pace that the Supreme Court had taken with regard to getting to electronic filing. And, you know, I think he's right on that. At least we're oftentimes slow to the harvest of ingenuity, but the word "choose" in there sort of offends me. And I think it's a challenge to all of us to really think about why would we choose to be late to the harvest of ingenuity. But sometimes it's true. So one of the things that really, when we think about the vision for the LA Superior Court, we started talking. This was about a 6 or 8 month process with our judicial officers, very engaged. We had 21 judges from across our court, different disciplines, different lengths of time with the court, and we started looking at sort of the basics. What's our vision? What's our mission? Um, we changed our mission statement, and I won't read you the whole thing, but everyone can look it up. But one of the things that we really talked about was in our old mission statement, we had the word efficient, that we would be efficient. And there was a very intentional shift. That word does not exist in our mission statement anymore. It's now that we will be effective. And I think that's something that's really important to me and important to our court of, let's not just do things to do it fast. Let's do it well. And then, when we looked at our vision statement, I'll read you our whole vision statement, which is: our court will be accessible to all, trusted by all, and just for all. And it's a pretty strong statement that we want to be accessible by all. And I just gave you earlier some of the real barriers to access to big county. Traffic's an issue, technology is an issue for some people, language barriers, just we could go on and on, all the barriers. And so trying to think of ways to make it truly accessible for all. And then, trusted by all. I know we're going to talk today, I think, a little bit about how we make sure people trust us, but that's another big one. How do we make sure the system is trusted? And if they can't access it, they can't trust us either. So that's really important. And then the last piece, just for all. We want to be doing justice the best we can, and thinking about new and innovative ways to do that and sort of meet the needs of our litigants is important. So we really sort of go through that and think about, what does that look like? Well, we want to be people focused. We want to really sort of make sure that the first thing we think about when we are doing things at the court, new technology, new innovation, new processes, really sort of start from the focus of the people, primarily the court users, but also our internal court staff and judicial officers. But really, the first one is the folks outside. We want to be transformative through innovation. We want to use data to inform our decisions, and ultimately, all of that led us to this idea of it's really sort of focusing on enhancing accessibility and transforming the user experience. And sort of thinking innovatively and forward, looking into how we might be able to do that. I think, as you look back over the couple of centuries, almost 250 years now that we've been doing this in this country, I think, many times people have said Thomas Jefferson could walk in and practice law today. I don't know that that's something we should be proud of, especially now that most people don't have a Thomas Jefferson standing by their side. And so, really thinking about the best way to deliver justice and meet the needs of people is really the key reason why in our strategic plan, we're really focused on using any sort of innovative technology, AI obviously being one of those, to try to help people as best we can. And I gave the example of court help. You can go on court help, and all the content is based upon what's on our website or on the Judicial Council of California's website. But of course, it's hard to find. So, you can go on court help right now and say, how do I file a response or an answer to an eviction case? And it gives you step by step and links to it. I mean, that's what we should be doing. And AI has given us the opportunity to do that.
Everything you said resonates with me as somebody who, led a court system, for a while. And I have a slide of a, surgical suite from 1890 and a modern surgical suite, and then the Iron County Courthouse in Michigan from 1890 and today, and it looks exactly the same. And a lawyer dropped from 1890 really could navigate, today's courtrooms. And I agree with you. I mean, I'm not sure why that's something we should be proud of. It seems to me, since we've gone through 4 industrial revolutions, like we might think about how we need to sort of change how we do what we do. But you've been incredibly successful at that at lots of different levels, and also in helping others be successful at that in some of your roles. Um, and in addition to some of the barriers that are kind of cultural and legal and regulatory to transformation, there's just a big change management um, hill to climb, I think, in providing court services to a largely unrepresented user base. And when, lawyers and judges have done things one way for a long time, that can be a really hard part of the equation. What have you learned about change management in our profession that values, sort of how we've always done things? We're literally governed legally by decisions we made before. Like that's what precedent is. So it's a very hard change management atmosphere. How have you succeeded? I mean, you've definitely succeeded in ways I don't see other examples of. So what's your change management secret playbook?
Yeah, I think it's you point out the always looking back, sort of the looking at precedent, and I think that is a challenge for us. And so, and people don't like change. No one wakes up in the morning and says, well, maybe a few of us do, but most people don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to change something today, and just like move my cheese today. But so I think you have to, start with making the case for change. Why? What's the reason? Change for change is not going to be successful, and so diagnosing problems is important. Being able to describe them clearly. I think a lot of times we say, "Let's make this change," and no one understands why we're doing it. So that's to me number one, is really trying to lay that out clearly. Where in essence, no one can really say no, because you've made the case, and unless they just want to say no just to say no, they're going to say, oh yeah, this makes sense. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is and this is a real problem for us that I think we have to keep working on, is just we do not allow for failure. And obviously, when we're deciding cases, we don't want to be making mistakes. There is an appellate process for that if we do. But so I think that sometimes spills over into our administrative functions. Let's not make any mistakes. And we know what happens with that, which is no one will ever do anything because they're terrified. So making sure people in our organizations understand that we can try things. Obviously, we want to fail fast and we don't want to fail big. We want to, we want to try to make sure failure is managed, but we're going to fail. I've failed many times in my career with things, but the goal is to fail fast. And then the biggest question is, how do we get up? What do we do next? How do we learn from that failure and move on? And I think that's a real key to success. I mean, some of the sort of simple things of, if just pilot it, give it a shot at in a smaller scale and see if it works, see what doesn't work, and try to figure out how to make that happen. I think all those things are really key. Probably at the bottom line, I wrote an article with Chief Justice Nathan Hack a few years ago about sort of change and how to deal with it. And sometimes it feels like you're just staring down the gauntlet And one of the things we wrote about is sometimes you just have to do it. You have to just make a decision and move. You have to say, we're going to do this change because it's the right thing to do. And with the best information you have, make that decision. We talk about in that article that, sometimes you don't have all the information. Actually, most of the time you don't have all the information. So you just have to make the decision. And I think sometimes the fear of just doing anything stops us from doing anything. And so really just having the courage to step up and say, this is an important change. We're going to try it. We might not be successful, but staying with what we're doing and have been doing is even less successful. So I think those are some things that I really try to ground myself in and try to share with people I'm around to try to move things forward.
I feel like you're like peering into my soul. I mean, just gave this keynote about change management, and I said, action leads to information. That's my view. Is you have to sometimes just have to do things to learn. Um, and you might learn that that thing doesn't make any sense to do anymore. But action leads to information. On my team, I often say, let's run the experiment. Like somebody has an idea, somebody else says it'll never work. And my answer is always, let's run the experiment, find out. But how do you convince others of that, I now work with a lot of people who are not lawyers, and that's refreshing, I have to say. um, how do you convince others like to go along the 500 plus judicial officers and lawyers who work with you?
Yeah, I think the first thing, sort of back to one thing, is you gotta explain the why. People have to grasp the why. They have to understand why. If we try to do it before that, it's not going to work. And then I think, I mean, this is not going to help people who are just starting off doing change, but you have a track record, right? I mean, you've been successful maybe in little things, maybe in big things, and you gain trust. So I think, again, that requires action. To your point earlier, maybe you try something. Let's say you're new at this. You're a new court administrator. You're new in this function. You got to do something to sort of build trust. And then when you're successful, or you fail but you're able to pivot and make it successful, then you get some trust, and then you gain a little bit more, and you gain a little more, and then ultimately you say, we want to do this giant thing, and here's why, and people say, sign me up, let's go. Which is kind of interesting to watch. You know, I've done in my career, been able to do sort of crazy things that I look back and think, I'm so excited to have been a part of those things. And I think that helps me when I say, we're going to do this thing, and people come along. And now, if I would have been new in my career and started that, would I have been able to convince people? I don't know. But I think, again, it sort of goes back to that, for somebody that's kind of new at this, you got to start. Otherwise, you're never going to gain that credibility that's so important whenever you're talking about change.